Streaming worldwide from the Klamath Sports Network studios in Klamath Falls, it's time for the KSN Underground Podcast with Brian Gailey.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome back to the KSN Underground Podcast. I am Brian Gailey, the publisher of Klamath Sports Network, and I am the host of your podcast. Today, we have a lot of cool things for you in this episode. Starting off with Talkin Viks, we visit with Coach Lease once again. We recap the Southside Series versus Henley. We talk about QB1 Tyson Van Gastel and preview Friday's homecoming game against North Valley. In the Gaucho Collective feature interview, we visit with Cooper Roberts. Cooper is the vice president of the Klamath Falls Football Officials Association. We talk about officiating in the Klamath Basin, the shortage of officials, and what this could mean to future varsity contests here in the Klamath Basin. Today's episode is brought to you by the members of the Klamath Sports Network family, the KSNsiders. More on them in just a moment. Over the weekend, I had a chance to watch the Seattle Mariners hit their 90th win this season and make a run for the wild card, the AL wild card spot. They needed a lot of things to happen for them to get in. On Sunday, they had to win, and they needed a loss by the Yankees as well as the Red Sox. Unfortunately, the Yankees and the Red Sox both won. Therefore, it did not matter what happened with the Mariners, and unfortunately, they lost their game anyway. In the last month or so, their marketing team up there at Seattle had done a fantastic job with the hashtag #SeeUsRise and everything they were doing to promote the Mariners trying to get into the postseason. The first time they would be in the postseason in 20 years, I believe it is. It reminds me a lot of back in the 90s. 95 Refused to Lose was big up in Seattle back in the days of the Kingdom. And it got me thinking about my very first professional sports game that I ever attended. It was in 95. It was right after the baseball strike, if you remember that. If you've been around long enough, in 94, 95, there was a big baseball players strike. And back then I was in high school. I was at Henley High School, an ROTC member, and we took a trip to Seattle, touring McCord Air Force Base, along with some other things up there. And one of our downtimes was to attend a game, a Seattle Mariners game at the Kingdom. It was my very first game. It was a first game for a lot of the guys and gals that went up on that trip as well. I believe they faced the Orioles. I'm not 100% sure on that. If somebody out there was also there, maybe you can correct me in the comments if where you're looking does have comments. There's a lot to be had on your very first professional sports game, whether it be baseball or it be football or anything else, soccer even, Major League Soccer. Oh my goodness, has they really stepped up in what they're doing now? Lots of stuff to do. It's just an awesome memory maker. If you had, and can you remember your first professional sports game you've ever attended? I'm not talking college. We'll talk about college in just a second, but I'm talking professional sports, NFL, MLB, Major League Soccer, anybody like that that's got those professional sports out there. Where did you go? What did you see? What was the experience like? For me, I remember it being just awe-inspiring. I'd never been in a facility that large. It was the Kingdom. Of course, it's no longer standing. They floated it a few years later to build Safeco Field at the time, now T-Mobile Park. But it was just awesome. I remember walking up the ramp, being excited to go in. And that was just the first game. I happened to be able to attend 3 games that year. That very first game, we were out in left field. I remember having players out there just far enough that you could actually talk to them. And I remember seeing the left fielder for the Mariners at the time was playing catch with some of the people out in the outfield. So that was pretty cool. It was one of those things that just sticks in the back of my head. Later that year, I did have the opportunity to go to the playoff game, the American League Championship Series, Seattle versus Cleveland. The game before that was the big playoff game to get in between them and the Yankees. It's the famous one that you know of, Edgar's double. Griffey runs from first to score his winning run off first base to score and get them in to be able to move on to the American League Championship Series where they faced Cleveland. I didn't go to the game where Griffey made his winning run, but I did get to go to 2 games of the championship series there, and it was amazing. Playoff game was my second and third game ever in professional sports. to be able to attend those. That's pretty darn cool. Again, what did you do? What was your first games? What do you remember about those first games, professional games that you ever went to? I'm curious to know. If you're listening to our podcast, send me a message. It's info@klamathsportsnetwork.com. I'd be happy to hear your stories. Maybe we'll bring them up next week in the podcast and talk about those. It wasn't until years later that I was able to attend a game in Safeco, then T-Mobile Park, just a couple years ago with my kids. It was kind of cool there. Now, college, maybe you haven't been to a pro game, but you've been to college games. You know, there's a big Oregon Duck presence here. There's a big Oregon State Beavers presence here. Oregon Tech basketball. They put on a heck of a show as well. Our first Oregon Ducks game, we went to Autzen Stadium in 2014. It was the season opener against South Dakota State. And of course, it was a squash game between Oregon and South Dakota. Oregon won 62-13, but the whole family got to go. It was my kids' first ball game to go to that was not like a high school game or something like that. We went to go watch the Oregon Duck. Again, what was your first one? What did you take your kids to? If you were a kid or you don't have any kids, what was your very first game? I'm curious to know what that is. Let us know. I'd be happy to chat with you about it in the comments. But first, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode. You, our KSNsiders. You might be asking, who is a KSNsider? A KSNsider is a financial supporter of Klamath Sports Network. I can hear you now. Shit, he wants money. Before you tune me out, listen to this. KSNsider is a way for fans to support what is done here in Klamath Sports Network, because without your support, content and shows like KSN Underground would not exist. Anyone can be a KSNsider, especially if you love high school athletics. Parents and family of players? Check. Fans of a school or program? Check. Fans of what we do here at Klamath Sports Network? Check. People with a pulse? Check. I invite you to help by pledging as little as $5 per month. Every little bit helps keep me caffeinated and fuel in the tank to cover those road games. For more information, visit klamathsports.net and click on the yellow button at the top of the page that says Become a KSNsider. Our program is managed via the Patreon platform. There is no obligation for you to sign up. You can cancel at any time. Pledges start at $5 per month. Content like this cannot be made without support from people like you. Thank you. Now, on to the show. This week on Talkin Viks with Coach Lease, he opens up about how he feels about his quarterback Tyson Van Gastel. We break down the Southside series against Henley. If you were a Vikings fan, it went really, really well for you. If you are not a Vikings fan, Henley, unfortunately, they just didn't get to control the ball much at all. The Vikings held onto the ball. They ran it. Hornets were only able to have 9 offensive plays in the first half. It was not a good night if you were a Hornets fan, but if you were a Vikings fan, you were riding high at the end of that game. As well, we're going to preview the homecoming game against North Valley. Coach is going to give us his breakdown of North Valley's style, as well as players to watch for the Knights. Here's my Talkin Viks interview with Mazama Football head coach, Vic Lease. Coach, thanks again for being on the show.
Love being on the show.
So last week, Southside Series was a pretty amazing game if you're a Vikings fan. Tyson had a heck of a night, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He threw 5 for 8, 75 yards for 3 TDs, threw them to Hubble, Monteith, and Burke, rushed 17 times. He was your second leading rusher at 67 yards, also a TD. Talk a bit about Tyson and Van Gastel.
Well, we've been just working on his progression. He's an outstanding athlete and young man, and he's been raised the right way. His parents have done an outstanding job with him, and he just competes, and he does it in a stoic manner. He doesn't get too excited. He doesn't get down, acknowledges when he makes mistakes, acknowledges when he, has those successes and that keep us going. He's just a pleasure to coach. He's a competitor. And for a sophomore, be where he's at right now, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's hard to believe he's a sophomore. He looked like a seasoned senior out there. It was not a sophomore's performance.
Yeah, I went to the JV game yesterday night and talked to a couple of the Henley folks out there that been out there for a long time, and they said the same thing. It's amazing to see that he's only a sophomore right now. He plays like a seasoned senior right now. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it. By the time he is a senior, he'll be one of the top quarterbacks in all of the state of Oregon.
I believe you. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid myself. He's a good kid, nice and humble. He was on our show last week. I don't know if you got to catch that or not, but he is a very humble kid, and I'm very happy for him. He's got a very bright future ahead. Looking at your offense, 336 yards, 64 plays. That's kind of typical. You guys held, I want to go to your defense for a minute. You held Henley 135 yards, 31 plays. It was like 9 plays total in the first half. Talk a bit about your defense, if you would.
Our scheme against them is to allow our kids to play. We try not to get complicated. And when you start getting complicated on the defensive side of the ball, that's when mistakes occur. That's when you give up the big play. And when we allow to keep our defensive scheme simple and let the kids play, read the offense, and take what is given to us, we have a ton of success. And Coach Fullerton is exceptional at doing that, taking away what teams like to do well. And then when we do that, we force them into those things that they don't like to do. And, we've seen a number of teams try to think they have a way around our defense. We've seen some empty sets, and we've seen teams have some success with empty. And anybody that sees the Marshfield tape from the first game of the season, they're going to think they can get us in empty. Well, it's the first game of the season. Empty set is pretty tough to defend, but we're seasoned at it now. And anybody that sees the Henley know that we can handle an empty set. We have the right personnel out there. We have the right calls, and that's really where it's at. Bo Fullerton's outstanding defense coordinator. He's one of my closest friends, and he does a great job. He puts the time in and gets the boys in the position that they need to be to have success. And that allows our offense to do what we need to do, and that's basically keep a hold of the football. They're 3 and out, and they're forced to punt or turnover on downs. It gives the offense the ball, and we just, we eat up the clock. And that's our approach. That's what we love to do.
Yeah, you definitely shown that very well last week. You had 31 minutes, 36 seconds of time of possession, 14:40 to Henley. It looked very good. And going back to your defense there for a moment, there was, you said you try to keep it simple, but you still sacked Stork, I believe it was 6 times, 2 of those by Monteith. So the pressure was there even if you were keeping it simple.
A couple of those sacks were calls from Coach Fullerton on a certain stunt look that they could not block. Those other sacks were coverage sacks. We had the receivers covered up. He had nobody to throw to, so he had to run. So it was a combination of things defensively that allowed us to get to him and get those sacks.
Absolutely fantastic game last week. That was last week. I do want to look ahead to this week. It's homecoming here from Mazama. North Valley, they come in 5-1 on the season. They got an extra victory last week because of a forfeit game against KU. They replaced it against Cresswell, 3A Cresswell. They defeated them 48-7. Can you talk a bit about, take the coach hat off for a minute, put the AD hat on. How is that forfeit going to work out for them in the long run in the wins-loss column?
KU had to take a forfeit for whatever reason. I don't know if it was sickness related or injury related or what the case was, but they decided to take the forfeit. So in the league standings, North Valley is 1-0 in the league standings, and KU of course is 0-1. And so that's really where it applies. It really doesn't apply anywhere else. It's my understanding that the OSA ranking system basically disregards the forfeit in calculation, but they have it in place for standing in league standing, so the league can make the decision on who the league representatives are. Now, standing has always been where the ADs select whoever their state playoff representatives are. Record-wise, that helps them in the league standings, but rankings-wise, it will not.
Gotcha. All right, Coach. So taking a look here, North Valley, they've only had the 1 loss on the season to Siuslaw. They have wins against St. Mary's, Cottage Grove, Elmira, and then Cresswell. How are they looking? What's your scouting report on the Knights?
They're much improved. Coach DeForest does a great job over there. I have a lot of respect for him and keeping that program going. A few years ago, they were really tough, and we had a pretty good battle against them, and they've always got something, a trick up their sleeve or something that messes with our offense a little bit. He's kind of notorious for that. A couple of years ago when we played him, they did some stunts off the edge and some twist and stuff that made our reads a little bit difficult, but second half we adjusted and we were fine to it. And I expect something like that from North Valley. Offensively, they finally, in my opinion, they finally have a true identity. They're a wing T team. They're running the football well. The misdirection is really good, and they're doing some things out of that wing T that gives some defenses some issues. He'll also get some spread stuff, run some shotgun spread stuff, but that's not really their identity. They just go to it, so he has it in his package. They're a wing T team, and they're gonna want to run the football on us.
So if they're going to be running the football on a wing setup, what are you guys going to be looking at defensive-wise to try to stop that?
The one thing about the wing T is they're a true read team, and what I mean by that is their guards give you a true read. The wing T is designed for misdirection, but if you're disciplined defensively and you make good reads and then play off of blocks, you'll be in the right position to make plays. And really this week, that is what we are focusing on. We're focusing more on ourselves than anything else. We need to get better at the things that we are doing, and I've been saying that all season long, and this week is no different. We just need to improve. And so we're looking at ourselves more this week than actually we are. North Valley, we put small packages together to prepare our defense and our offense, what we think we're going to see defensively out of them and what we think we're going to see out of them offensively. But really, fundamentals is where we're going back to, our blocking progression, our tackling progression, our reads off of their offense, and what our responsibilities are on defense. Offensively, making good line calls, drive blocking correctly, maintaining blocks, running the ball efficiently, passing the ball efficiently. That's our focus this week. For the next 3 days, that's what our practices are going to be focused on.
Catching up on the fundamentals is really the core elements of the game. If you're not doing those well, you can't really do anything else well.
That's correct. And that's that we've always believed in here at Mazama, and that's truly what we focus on as fundamentals. And you can see that in teams too. The teams that do tackle well, run well, catch well, defend well, those are fundamental teams. You're going to have some athletes now and then, but those teams that do it consistently, week after week, year after year, those are the ones that you know that their coaching staffs are focusing on fundamentals.
So you mentioned they do a wing T formation there. That's their style over there at North Valley. Who are their players to watch? Who are we going to be keeping an eye on this week?
Well, their quarterback, the Tidwell kid, is pretty good. You know, they play a lot of seniors. Pretty good sized senior class. Their quarterback is a pretty good football player. The Dumas kid, their fullback type, is pretty good too. Nate Love is another a wing back for him, and Chris Courier, he's another one. Jalen Jenkins is a receiver for them, and their other tight end is Brady Huff. You know, it always seems like they got a Comerford kid in their lineup and a Farmer kid over there in North Valley. And of course, this year they do again. They got 2 senior boys on the offensive and defensive line. And so those are the boys. Those are the main boys we're looking at. We need to be prepared for Friday night and the things they do and how they're going to play us. Defensively, they have another kid by the name of Leo Freeman who plays inside linebacker. He's a young kid. He runs to the ball well. And then Sam Campos, who's a senior, he also plays linebacker. And those kids, you know, we watch a lot of film and we see what they do and how to play us, and we definitely got to keep our eye on them. So those are some players for North Valley that we're definitely going to be paying attention to Friday night.
Very good. Thank you for the update, Coach. We're almost here, finished and done with our time here on the show today, but I do need to ask, and a lot of people want to know, how is Zeke doing?
Well, Zeke is day to day. That's how we are approaching this, and we're hoping to get him back on Friday. We won't know. We'll know a little more later on today, maybe tomorrow. Zeke is one of those kids that he's a difference maker for us. He's a game changer, and we miss him. We miss him greatly, but he's got to take care of himself, and that's for us. My point of view is he's got a long life ahead of him. He needs to heal up and be ready to go. And I'll be quite honest with you too. The doctors may say, we're going to clear him and everything else, but if I don't feel in my heart that he is safe to run the football for the Mazama Vikings, then he's going to sit and wait until I feel that he is 100%, and that I know that nothing is going to happen to that boy. Nothing means more to me than the safety and welfare of my athletes, and I'm going to make sure he's 100% ready to go. He hasn't practiced in a while. So even if he's cleared Wednesday or Thursday, that maybe give him a day of practice. I don't feel good about that at all. The young man needs a good week of practice under his belt. Maybe another week before we see Zeke back on the field, or maybe 2. I don't know, but we'll definitely get him back when the time is right.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed on his health and condition. Our thoughts and prayers go out with him too. We are, in the second half of the season now. You're in league play, second league game. Teams got to be kind of banged up by now. Everybody's probably feeling a little something. Is there anybody else that's nursing any major injuries?
We got some. We got a few owies out of the nothing major. We had some. And we talked to the boys about this. I don't sugarcoat it or anything else like that. It's football. You're going to get beat up. It's a physical sport. And if you play it the right way, you're going to be sore after games. So we got a few boys that are a little dinged up. There was a physical contest on Friday, but I anticipate them all being 100% ready to go. And on Friday, like I said, we got some owies. The beautiful thing about it is our 0-period weight training class. They get to work a lot of that stuff out. We'll see tonight at practice if there's any residual effects from Friday. I don't believe there is. Most of the boys will come and tell me if there's something major. And if it's minor, they're going to work through it, and we'll be good to go. Zeke's the only one right now, varsity wise.
Coach, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We can't wait to see you this weekend at homecoming.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. As always, I greatly appreciate Coach Lease for taking time out of his very busy day to visit with us here on the KSN Underground podcast. Up next, it's the Gaucho Collective feature interview with Cooper Roberts, the Vice President of the Klamath Falls Football Officials Association. You may recognize his voice. He's previously been on radio. He called games for the Klamath Union Pelicans as well as up at Oregon Tech. In addition to officiating, he is now the office manager for Keno Elementary School. He has 5 years experience as a referee, and his favorite sport to officiate is basketball. Now, my interview with Cooper regarding officiating in the Klamath Basin. Cooper, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Coop, you actually got a hold of me a couple of weeks ago and wanted to come on and talk about the referee shortage going on. There's employee shortages all over the place. If you got a business, it's no secret that there's an employee shortage going on. That's affecting you guys too, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is. We've seen over the last, I'd say, year and a half, numbers that were already low in several of our associations, several of our sports are even lower right now. As time's gone on and older guys have left officiating for whatever reason that may be, we're really struggling right now as far as numbers go. Some associations, some sports are better than others, but I think all of our associations are down for sure. And it's really gotten worse over the last year.
At a game, there's really 3 teams on the court or on the field. You got the home team, the visiting team, and the officiating team. And without any one of them, you can't have a game. And with the threat of things going on, is there really a threat of some of these high school and college games being canceled because of referee shortages?
Yeah, I really think there is. We see on a Friday night for football, we're moving games around. We have a Friday coming up here in the next couple weeks where we have 4 high school varsity football games. That's 20 officials right there. We've moved one game already to Thursday, and there's a huge threat, especially for sub-varsity contests at the high school level, to be either tabled for another date or just outright canceled. It's really hard to get that many officials right now, especially in the football world. At the collegiate level, it's not as bad. The collegiate assigners recruit a little differently, a little bit of a different world when it comes to the collegiate aspect. But in the high school level, for sure, we're looking at moving games at the very least, if not canceling a game, moving it to another week, another day. There are teams that instead of playing on a Friday night under the Friday night lights, you're playing on a Saturday at 1:30 in the afternoon, and you don't have that high school football atmosphere.
I can see that could be challenging, to say the least, for some of the athletes as well as the coaches. But you guys, schedule-wise, moving some games around, there's a game this Thursday. Henley is moving their homecoming to Thursday. Was that related to officials?
Yeah, this was a Friday that we had 5 varsity football games on Friday night. 2 of them have been moved to Thursday. Chinookwan's home game at Mazama is now on Thursday. Henley's home game is now on Thursday. That is for sure related to an officials shortage. We didn't have 25 certified officials that were able to work on Friday. So for guys like me, that means I'm working a varsity game Thursday and a varsity game Friday, along with whatever sub-varsity contests we have earlier on in the week.
From your experience and what you see there as the vice president of the local association, what's some of the reasons you're seeing for this shortage right now?
Right now, a lot of it comes down to the age of our local officials. We have a lot of especially more experienced officials at the referee position on the football field or your crew chiefs in basketball. They're getting up there in age, and they honestly probably saw the COVID crisis, not having high school sports last season and the normal season, as an opportunity to maybe step back. We've had several officials step back from officiating due to COVID and just haven't come back, whether that be because of their age and their body giving out on them or due to COVID stuff, who knows? But I believe truly it has a lot to do with the age of a lot of our officials in our local association. There's a ton of other factors, like any other human resource thing. There's a ton of factors that go into it, but I just believe that it's hard to get people that want to spend, 5+ nights a week out on the field, on the court, going to meetings and training. It's a constant thing. It's a constant learning experience, and it's not something that is easy money. It's not something that you can get off the couch and go do. It's hard to find people to replace our older officials that are retiring.
We're talking with Cooper Roberts. He is the vice president of the Klamath Falls Football Association, and you often see him out on the field and on the court. You may not even know who Cooper is, but he's one of those guys that's out there. To go along with the shortage, there's a recruiting process that's happening right now. As a matter of fact, just today I saw a new ad on Facebook by the OSAA and the Oregon Athletic Officials Association. If somebody's interested that's listening right now is wanting to do this, what's the process also to get started?
So it's actually a really simple process to get started. You can head to our website, which is kffoa.org, and you can look at all of the different sports that we have associations for on that page. There's football, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, wrestling, you name it, it's there. Honestly, all you have to do is sign up. your contact information is automatically forwarded to the board of that association, and that association will reach out to you about training opportunities. As far as at a state level, I know the OSAA is down. I believe the email that came out last week said we're down 60% of officials from 2 years ago at this time. So the state is really trying to get people involved. At a local level, though, really, you just have to sign up and get your information to the assigner, and then the assigner and the board will get back to you and talk to you about what training opportunities might arise and get you out onto the field as soon as we can.
Now, you mentioned a list of all the different sports that you guys have to choose from there. Are the officials, or say somebody that's interested right now listening, can they pick a sport, or are they assigned sports?
You can pick whatever sport you want. You know, if you don't want to officiate basketball, you don't have to officiate basketball. If you want to do just baseball, you can pick just to do baseball. Essentially, these groups are all separate groups, and whatever group you sign up for, what sports they cover is what you'll do. The only one where you might be assigned a different sport would be the Baseball Softball Association. You might, if you just want to do baseball, you might end up picking up a softball game or two here and there, just depending on the numbers that we have.
I can't help but not ask, what's the pay for something like this?
It depends on the level. I can go out right now and work a middle school game and make $50, or I can go out and do a 4A varsity game and make $72. It just depends on what level you're doing. But the more you move up and the better you get, which all comes back to training, the more you're going to make. So you can really, truly turn around and make $400 or $500 every 2 weeks or so, depending on how many games you want to do. And you're totally in charge of how many games you do. You can mark days off as unavailable. You can tell your assigner, hey, I only want to work 2-3 games a week. Or you can tell your assigner, you know what, you can put me on a game every day of the week. So how much you make is really up to you. But as far as per game, it really depends on the level, but anywhere from $45, $50 to about $80.
Thank you for that information there, Cooper. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, for the people who might be interested, it's obviously athletic competition. You guys are moving around a lot, especially in basketball. What kind of physical condition does somebody need to be in health-wise if they're interested?
So it depends on the sport. Obviously, if you're wanting to do baseball, you don't move around a ton at baseball. You should still be able to cover the field and get to where you need to be. But as far as basketball, for example, you'll see officials out there, especially at the high school level, that are, a bit out of shape, you might say, or bigger or what have you. And that's okay, as long as you can get yourself into a position to cover the floor. And that's the big thing that an assigner will look for, is can you cover the floor? Obviously, the way you look is really important. As I'm sure fans will say, well, hey, that guy doesn't look like he could even play basketball. What's he doing out there refereeing? But it's not like the end of the world, though. As far as physical condition, but you should be in a condition where you could cover the floor and get to where you need to be, beat the players to the baseline, beat the play to the goal line in football. Or if you're wanting to do soccer, you should be able to consistently run for 40 minutes, almost continuously. So wherever you are at physically, if you can get to that point, then we definitely want to talk to you.
Now, you also mentioned training there a couple of different times a few minutes ago. What are officials doing to make themselves better and make their calls more accurate? You're only human. Things do happen. Calls are missed, or certain calls are made that maybe they thought they saw wasn't there. What are some of the things you guys are doing to improve the accuracy of what you guys are doing out there?
So we are constantly training, critiquing, going over film. You name it, we probably do it as a way to get better. Every time I have a game and there's film available, I go back and I watch almost every second of that game. I might fast forward through the slow parts, what have you, but I watch 90% of the footage of that game and I look for little things. Oh, maybe I should be in this spot instead of this spot. As far as a group, we have weekly training meetings. Usually we meet at a school in a classroom and we go over a lot of different things. We'll talk about the games from last week. We'll talk about things that went right, things that went wrong. We'll review plays and film. And our state has a state rules interpreter for each sport that sends out weekly updates and bulletins about things that he's noticed that we can do better. And we go over those things. And those meetings can last anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, depending on how much stuff we're going over. There's also study groups, there's film groups. And if you don't like leaving your house, there's 3 or 4 Zoom groups that I'm a part of that meet weekly or biweekly or monthly, and we go over film and all kinds of stuff. So there's constantly training opportunities where we're looking at what we can do better as officials and as an association. And it mostly has to do with rule interpretation and mechanics being where we're at on the field, how we look, what we're doing. There's constant training. Now, as far as making calls more accurate, like you said, we're human. And officiating is a lot of judgment. In my judgment, he lowered the helmet and there was illegal helmet contact. The coach might not see it that way, and another official on the field might not see it that way. It's all judgment, and we work really hard on making sure our judgment is sound. That's one of the things that we're graded on every game, and we are graded every game by the crew chief. He will grade us on our hustle, our judgment, our mechanics, and our rule knowledge. And it's really important that we have sound judgment, that we're not just guessing, essentially. So the more you're out on the field and the more film you're watching and the more training you're doing, the better your judgment's going to be. But on the field, at the high school level, we don't have monitors to go to. We don't have that capability.
No instant replay.
No instant replay at the high school level. I'm sure any sports fan that watches college or professional athletics, you'll notice that they go to a monitor. And at the college level, when I do a college basketball game, that might be an option. I do small college stuff, so it's not always an option. We don't have that capability. So whatever training we're going to do and whenever it is, it's going to be after the game, and we'll do better next time. But we're constantly working on bettering ourselves as an association and as individual officials.
Well, as a fan of the sport, as well as a broadcaster of my own, I do greatly appreciate you guys taking the time to learn how to be better at your craft.
That's the thing. It's time. People have to understand that. And I think it's another reason that we are experiencing a shortage. It is a time commitment. There are several times where, I'm thinking, man, I am spending a lot of time, officiating and training and watching film. And there are some weeks where I have a game Monday, we have a meeting on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I'm off and I'm sitting at my house and I'm watching film and I'm going over my game from Monday. I'm going over my game from Friday, what have you. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm working games. So it's a time commitment. And I know that coaches are starting to realize that we're short and they're appreciating our time a lot more. And it's nice that people do appreciate what we do.
With so much going on, your time is very busy. Do you ever get a chance just to sit back and watch a game on the screen? If so, are you going, you missed that call?
Well, when I do get to watch a game, and I'll say this is one of my annoyances with officiating, I cannot watch a sporting event now without watching the referees. That's what I do. I watch, watching a Division I college basketball game, I'm watching, what are these guys doing? What are they doing that I can start doing to be better? I don't get to watch a lot of sports anymore because usually when there's a game on, I'm working a game. But I think one of the things about officiating is it's a brotherhood. Even if you don't know the guys that are on the screen, I wouldn't yell at them. I might think, oh, maybe you missed that one, but we can always use that as a learning experience as an official and use that to get better as well.
We've been talking with Cooper Roberts, the vice president of the Klamath Football Officials Association, about things happening with the association and statewide issues, different things going on. Once again, I'm going to come right back into the recruiting part of it. If somebody is interested, they're listening to the show and they go, you know what, I have some time, I want to do a game or two a week. How do they get in touch with you guys?
All right. I think the easiest way, I'm in charge of recruitment and retention, so reach directly out to me. I'll give you my phone number. Don't abuse it. It's 541-331-9071. Give me a call, shoot me a text, and I'll be more than happy to connect you with the right folks. Even if it's not just football, I can connect you with any association that you like. If you like soccer, wrestling, basketball, baseball, whatever you want to do, I can connect you with the right people. We really appreciate any interest that we can get. It's getting rough out there, and we want to make sure that we're allowing these kids to play. That's the big piece. We're doing it for the kids, and we want to make sure that all of these athletes have the opportunity to play.
The officials out there, you said it's like a brotherhood and everybody's doing it for the kids and everything like that. There's a tongue-in-cheek commercial out there by OSAA about some kids that are talking about a referee shortage, official shortage, and they're saying it's a lot because of the parents, what the parents are doing, being mean and rude to the officials or derogatory to the officials. When you go to a game, the PA announcer talks about good sportsmanship. What has been your experience involving parents and fans in their sportsmanship towards you on the field and court?
I've been doing this for 5 years. I do 3 sports. I've had parents, get on my case. I've missed calls. We've all missed calls. We've all had spectators yelling at us. And I believe that to an extent, it is part of the game. When you sign up to wear the stripes or wear the umpire shirt, you're signing up essentially to have your performance judged by 250 people sitting in the stands. That's just the way it is. I think I've only had it happen a couple times when people get personal When people personally attack you based on your appearance or based on if they know you personally, which I've had happen before, that's where I draw the line. Typically, I can zone the fans out pretty well. I don't listen to them. The only people I listen to are my partners and a coach here and there. But there are times where the fans can get pretty rough. And we have a group of great athletic directors and schools in our area where they take care of us. And if we have a problem with a fan and we tell them, they will promptly take care of it. Whether that be removing the fan or going over and having a talk with them, they take care of it very quickly and well. Where things can get a little more into a gray area, essentially, with coaches and players, obviously we have tools in our tool belt to take care of behavior on the court or on the field. But for the most part, coaches are willing to talk with you as long as you answer their questions and have that open dialogue with them. But yeah, I would say that for a young official, especially right now where we're putting young, relatively inexperienced officials on high school contests, maybe not at the varsity level, but at the JV level, it might be a lot for them to take in at once, where you have parents screaming and coaches screaming and players screaming. And I wouldn't say that it's a huge piece, but it is part of why young officials, even that we do recruit, don't come back for a second or third season. They say that over 50% of officials won't come back after their second year, and they do attribute part of that to coach and parent behavior.
Cooper, thank you very much for being on the show. I appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Brian, I don't think so. I really appreciate you having me. And once again, if you're interested at all, just reach out to me and I will put you in touch with the right people.
All right. Thank you, Cooper.
Thanks, Brian.
I want to thank Cooper for being on the Gaucho Collective feature interview this week. Cooper took time out of his schedule between school at Keno and officiating an Oregon Tech basketball scrimmage to chat with us today. Thank you, Cooper, for being on. Located at 11th and Main in downtown Klamath Falls, Gaucho Collective provides a fun and modern atmosphere for business owners and freelancers looking to grow their current presence or expand out of a home office.
Gauchos are diverse,
including those from higher education, internet and web development, photography, and marketing, just to name a few. Gaucho Collective engages entrepreneurs in ways that traditional offices cannot, through an open concept with a variety of semi-private and private spaces to suit all your business and collaborative needs. Amenities include flexible workspace options, fast and secure internet, document printing, kitchenette, utilities, conference room, hot coffee, and so much more.
Gaucho is even a great option for students looking to study off campus.
Community, collaboration, co-working. Your new office is waiting at Gaucho Collective. Learn more and become a member at gauchocollective.com. That's gauchocollective.com. Now we take a look around the Oregon 4A, specifically the coaches poll. It's the top 10 rankings for the Oregon 4A schools. Things are interesting here. The starting to happen is the best are starting to settle into their spots, and the rest are really still bouncing around. Taking a look at the list that came out today, Marshfield still holds the number 1 spot. They're 5-0 on the season, followed by Estacada and Marist, followed then by Cascade. That rounds up the top 4, all undefeated, 5-0 on the season. In 5th place, Mazama does hold that spot, 3-2 on the season. Last week they were in the 6th. And they switched with Banks, who is now in the 6th spot, who was 5th last week. Banks has a record of 3-1 on the season. The 7th spot is held by LeGrand. They were previously 9th. LeGrand has a record of 3-1. New this week is Hidden Valley. They were not on the list or received any votes last week at all. They're 3-1 on the season. The Vikes will face them in 2 weeks in Grants Pass. That should be a great game to look forward to there at Hidden Valley. It's always a challenge against the Mustangs. The 9th spot is held by Seaside, 3-1 on the season. They were 8th ranked last week. And then the 10th spot is Tillamook, 3-2 on the season, and that's where Tillamook was last week. Now, that is the coaches' top 10. OSAA Rankings also has their own top 10, as we talked about in previous episodes. That is based on statistical information and numbers. As we learned earlier today from Coach Lease on North Valley, they had a forfeit against Klamath Union last week. That forfeit win is not supposed to reflect in the OSAA rankings, but can impact the overall league standings. So taking a look at those OSAA rankings, it's a little bit different in the list than what the coaches have, again, based on statistical and numbers information. First is Estacada, followed by Cascade, then Marist and LeGrand. Mazama has the 5 spot, then Marshfield all the way down in the 6 hole, then Banks, North Valley, Henley, and Baker. Henley not on the coaches poll at all. Marshfield surprisingly in the 6th spot where the coaches have them first. It's interesting how all this stuff plays out. Could be that Marshfield had a game that was not in the OSAA. They played an out-of-state Washington team. It's possible that that game is not getting weighed as heavily, even though the team they played from Washington State was one of the best in the state of Washington. So going along with that, looking at the Skyline Conference, the way the standings hold up right now, we're one game in. So you either won your game or you lost your game. So you're either tied for first or tied for 6th right now. North Valley, Hidden Valley, and Mazama all won last week, so they are tied for first place. Henley, Klamath Union, and Phoenix, all taking a loss last week, are then tied for the 6th spot in the Skyline Conference. Thursday night in the Skyline Conference, Henley is going to host Phoenix. It's going to be their homecoming game as well. We learned that that game was moved to Thursday due to an officiating shortage that we talked with Cooper about just a few minutes ago as well. We might start to see more Thursday and Saturday games simply based on the availability of officials. It'll be interesting on how that'll all play out. Elsewhere in the Skyline Conference on Friday night, Hidden Valley is at Klamath Union. Last week, Klamath Union did have a forfeit loss to North Valley. We'll see how Klamath Union will fare this week. They ended up having a health and safety issue last week. Hidden Valley does come over to Modoc Field to face the Pelicans Friday night. And North Valley, as we said, comes to Mazama. It will be Mazama's homecoming there at Viking Field. And speaking of that game, that will be our KSN game of the week, Friday, October 8th at 7 o'clock. North Valley at number 5 Mazama. Our Vikings pregame show will be at 6 o'clock live on Facebook. I do want to give special thanks today to our podcast sponsors, you, the KSNsiders, as well as Gaucho Collective. Our sponsors for Klamath Sports Network in general include Pacific Crest Federal Credit Union, the Klamath County Event Center, Klamath Falls News. If you would like to become a sponsor or a KSNsider, just head over to our website, klamathsports.net, and all the information is there. For insiders, just go ahead and click on the yellow Become a KSNsider button, and you can learn and sign up there. For sponsors, go ahead and click on the Contact Us link. You can get a hold of us, and we'll reach out to you about what we can do to get you set up. Sponsorships start at just $50 a month. For my guests this week, Coach Vic Lease and Cooper Roberts, I am Brian Gailey, and we will see you on the field.
Wondering how you can show your love? Head over now to Facebook and drop a like.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram.
This has been the KSN Underground Podcast with Brian Gailey. The podcast is a production of Klamath Sports Network. Join the game at klamathsports.net.